DJ Scream, heavy in the streets.
We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood. We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood.
Hood rich.
Get it out the mud.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast. And this evening, we have some appetizers for you. And I'm talking about UFC 322, Jack Della Maddalena versus Islam Makhachev, and this is November 15th, 2025. This Saturday coming up at 9 Eastern. Or not 9 Central, 10 Eastern time. So we're back to the standard pay-per-view time, not like they were UFC 321, where the main event was like what two in the afternoon, but turned out to be very disappointing with the whole Tom Aspinall eye poke fiasco. So we're moving back. So it was nice that we didn't stay up till midnight to see that, but definitely a change of card, just a change of flavor in this card. This definitely seems like a lot better card, just in regards to there's 2 actual title fights on the card, not a vacant belt, and not the women's 115-pound division. A little difficult to get too excited about that weight class and women's division a little bit, but even more so when it wasn't an actual belt changing hand. It's just a vacant belt. But I think we have some better fights, and even the prelims are really good on this card. That was kind of the thing that hurt UFC 321 as well, is that really on the prelims there was just like one or two. Well, yeah, maybe, yeah, just like 1 or 2 like heavyweight fights that were kind of interesting, just because they were heavyweights with the potential of a vicious submission where they take a limb with you, or if they looking for a brutal knockout for heavyweight division. But there's more newsworthy fighters on the early prelims and the prelims. We'll get into that just in a second. But yeah, so that's November 15th, 2025, this Saturday coming up, and this is at the venue, the most famous venue when it comes to mixed martial arts and UFC. Madison, one of the famous. I was almost going to say it was the famous, but obviously some of the venues in Las Vegas are some of like the original venues for the UFC, but this is just original venue for like every big sporting event, no matter what kind of sport it is. Basketball, UFC, MMA, boxing. But yeah, Madison Square Garden will be the host of UFC 322 in the city of New York City, New York, United States. So that's the kind of the details, some of the details of the card, when it is and where it's held and what time. Before we get into the main card and really make the picks here, I just want to go over the prelims, because I was mentioning like the prelims is pretty good. You know, you got a lot of name-worthy fighters. There's only about what 3 or 4 fights on the card where it's not a notable fighter, not a fighter at least that I've heard of, for someone that usually for the most part just watches the pay-per-views and the main card. Pretty much all these names are familiar to me, and that makes for a good card. You know what to expect, kind of. And there's a lot of good fighters on this card. I just name them off kind of on the preliminary cards, early and preliminary cards. So the third fight on the card, you have a women's strawweight bout with Angela Hill versus Fatima Klein. So yeah, definitely Angela Hill. She's definitely a notable name. And then you have the next fight on that card, the the co-main event on the prelims, you have featherweight Pat Sabatini versus Chepe Mariscal. So yeah, Pat Sabatini. That's a familiar featherweight. And then the main event on the early prelims, you have a middleweight bout between Kyle Dukakis versus Gerald Meerschaert, who we definitely know about him. He's kind of seems like he's a kind of a stepping stone uh, jag for a lot of younger up and coming fighters because he has what like 37 wins, but he has like 20 losses and like heck what like 10 of them are by submission and 10 of them are by like knockout. But yeah, so but he beats someone every now and again to stay relevant and obviously stays relevant enough to be that stepping stone or that jag or that door way that standing in people's way. But yeah, so that just off of that, there's some familiar fighters and fights just from the early prelims. But then you get into the prelims, you get onto the second fight on just the standard prelims. You have a women's flyweight bout between Aaron Blanchfield versus Tracy Cortez. So those are two familiar names. And then you have the co-main event on the preliminary card. You have a middleweight bout between Roman Kopylov versus Gregory Rodriguez, and that has a lot of potential for at least from RoboCop side, Gregory Rodriguez's side, definitely a potential for a knockout of the night from coming from Gregory Rodriguez as well. The devastating, yeah, he got a knockout of the night performance of the night back in June 28th, 2005, with that just devastating knockout of Jack Hermason, knocking his ass down a peg. And people were upset about Gregory Rodriguez or RoboCop for landing a couple extra shots when he was already completely out cold. The ref just was a little slow to getting him off of him. But hey, man, that's not his job. That's not Gregory Rodriguez's job. He's a RoboCop. So yeah, that's what he's about is vicious knockouts. So I'm excited about that main event there no, that's just the co-main event of the middleweight between Roman Kopylov versus Gregory Rodriguez. But yeah, I'd love to see another devastating knockout from Gregory Rodriguez. And then middleweight co-main event, we have a middleweight bout or a main event of the prelims. You have a middleweight bout between Bo Nichols, who, man, looked like he had fell off and was down bad after his last fight that he had. What was that? Was that trying to think? Was that yeah? That was Renner de Ritter, who is just head and shoulders and just levels above currently where Bo Nichols is with him with that having just been what like his eighth fight. I think he just needed to maybe take a step back and maybe a step down in competition because I mean he's fighting almost a champion now in Renner de Ritter and he's just 29 years old. And like we said, that was his eighth fight. Maybe he needed to slow down and maybe fight more people his speed. And so Bo Nichols versus Rodolfo Vera. Let's see about him. Kind of a similar record. Not a whole lot of records, but still, like I said, they're more each other's speed. Bo Nichols and Rodolfo Vera, not quite head and shoulders, just better than than uh, Renner de Ritter was than Bo Nichols in their first bout, where he just absolutely got dominated by Bo Nichols. But he persevered or continued to work with his craft, and at least didn't let just a single loss get him two down or knock him down a peg too far. But he's right back in there still. Being the main event for the prelim, so hopefully he's maybe Bo Nichols will be able to get back on track. Anyway, so that's the prelims. A lot of notable names, a lot of good fights. There's sometimes when there's these prelims and transitions in the main card where I don't even want to watch too much of the prelims, but I'll probably be checking in around 5, 6 o'clock when the early prelims uh, start and probably try to catch at least the top three on to the entire main event. But anyways, let's get to the main card here. So this is the main card. This is UFC Della Maddalena versus Makhachev. So Jack Maddalena versus Islam Makhachev, UFC 322, and this is this Saturday coming up, November 15th, 2025. But anyways, let's get into this. So can I get a menu? And so the first fight on the card is a catchweight between Benel Dariush versus Benoit Saint Denis. And Benel Dariush, he was one of the first, or he wasn't one of the last guys to weigh in that was maybe like concerned about their weight, but somewhere in the middle, or maybe even some of the first people to like weigh in, but like heck, seemed like just what 15, 20 minutes after he weighed what a pound and a half or 1.2 pounds over, he could have weighed 156, and that would have been good enough for a lightweight. But yeah, once he found out he weighed 1.2 pounds over, like he just told him, I'm not going to cut any more weight. You can fight me at catch weight. So that's a little bit sus to me, and Benel Darius not really even trying to cut weight there. But Benel Darius, she is mostly known as like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a ground opponent submission with his submission game, uh, and he is 3-2 in his last five fights, and he's on a one-fight winning streak over Renato Moicano, which was a decision fight back in June 28th, 2025, and he has 30 fights with 23 wins, 6 losses, and 1 draw. In the 23 wins, he has 5 wins by knockout, 8 wins by submission, and 10 wins by decision. And then in the 6 losses, he's had five losses by knockout, one by submission, no by decision, and then we mentioned the draw. But yeah, he had gone on like almost like a close to I guess like a year and a half hiatus or so, because he had gotten knocked out like 2 times in the same year in 2023, and then that was Arman Sarukian, where he got knocked out knees and punches, and then that was December 2nd, 2023, and then he didn't fight again until fighting Moicano on June 28, 2025, which that was a decision win. But yeah, he was obviously concerned about getting his chin right, because he'd had some issues with Sarukian and Oliveira testing it, but he was able to go 3 rounds with Renato Moicano. But Benoit Saint Denis might be a step up in competition, and might just be in better shape because he was able to make weight. And honestly, Benoit Saint Denis, he's kind of a little underestimated, a little disrespected, it seems, in some of these fights here recently. But yeah, he's on a winning streak, a 2-fight winning streak here. He's originally was more of like a kickboxer, but later in his career he learned submission game and Brazilian jiu-jitsu as well. So they're similar fighters, uh, Benoit Saint Denis and Benel Darius, but I would say Benoit Saint Denis has the better stand up, at least. And he is he is also 3-2 in his last fight, but he's on a 2-fight winning streak, coming by way of arm triangle choke and submission face crank. So he's had some good submissions here over Kyle Pro Pollock and Mauricio Ruffy in his 2-fight winning streak, submission winning streaks that he's on. And he's had 19 matches with 15 wins and 13 losses and 1 no contest. In the 15 wins, he has 4 wins by knockout, 11 wins by submission, 0 by decision, and 3 losses, 2 by knockout, 0 by submission, and 1 by decision, and then 1 no contest. So I'm looking to pick Benoit Saint Denis in this, just mainly because he didn't have issues with cutting weight. So I'm just going to assume that he's in better shape, and I feel Benoit Saint Denis gets a little disrespected, and the fact that he's on a 2-fight winning streak with impressive performances with 2 submission victories. But I think I might be looking for Benoit Saint Denis to test Beneil Dariush's chin, especially if he didn't have a good weight cut, and that's kind of the reason he took a year and a half hiatus off because he was having issues with his jaw. So historically having some chin question marks about your chin, and then not making weight, and that not really being something that you're known for is not missing weight. Does that mean that you're starting to become old and washed up, or were you sick, or was there an injury? So in the catch weight bout, the 157.2 catch weight bout between Beneil Dariush versus Benoit Saint Denis, I'm going for with Benoit Saint Denis to get the knockout in this. It could be a knockout or a TKO. It could come in the first, second, or third round. I just don't trust Beneil Dariush's his weight cut, and then, like I said, you go 3 fights back, and he's having some issues with his jaw, and he's been knocked out 5 times, but only submitted once. Even though Benoit Saint Denis has shown that he's has more submissions in his career, I think the knockout is the more expected win over Beneil Dariush. All right. Now then, on to the second fight on the main card. You have a welterweight bout between Leon Edwards versus Carlos Prates. And Leon Edwards, uh, he's kind of having a little bit of a tough stretch here after after his little title reign. I guess his title reign, he won it and then was able to defend the welterweight belt twice. But since then, he hasn't looked real hot uh, in bouts. So he's 3-2 in his last 5 fights, but he's 0-2 in his last 2 fights, where he lost the welterweight belt by decision to Bilal Muhammad, and then kind of a get back, possibly a number 1 contender type of fight for maybe setting him up for, I guess, Bilal Muhammad at the time, but different welterweight champion now, uh, and Jack Della Maddalena, but he's lost 0-2 there, similar to him. But in his 28 matches, he has 22 wins with 5 losses, and then just 1 no contest. In the 22 wins, he has 7 wins by knockout, 3 wins by submission, and 12 wins by decision. And then in the 5 losses, he has 0 losses by knockout, 1 by submission, 3 by decision, and 1 by disqualification, and then 1 no contest. So even though he's never been knocked out, that's kind of what I'm leaning to. He's experienced like everything in his career now. He's lost by DQ, he's lost by decision. In his last fight, he lost by submission. It feels like it's almost about time for him to get knocked out. But Leon Edwards, like we said, was the former champion, but he's also a kickboxer. Like his style, would probably be kickboxing or like Muay Thai, like a predominantly a striker. And he's versus Carlos Prates, who is not a whole lot, just a year younger than him, but he's also a kickboxer, known as with his kickboxing and Muay Thai. But he is 4-1 in his last 5 fights, and he's on a 1-fight winning streak with a KO spinning back elbow on on Jeff Neal back at UFC 319. And I'm trying to think, yeah, he's one of the fighting nerds who they've fallen off a little bit since his last fight. They were on a pretty hot streak there where they were like 10-0 with 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 the fighting nerds, the guys wearing those like black rimmed glasses with the white tape in the middle. All those guys were on a pretty hot run there for a bit, but they've kind of slowed down and fell off for a little bit. But that's not the only other thing that's interesting about Carlos Prates, which makes me somewhat of a fan, kind of in a negative way, I guess. Probably shouldn't be like supporting this at all, but he's one of few mixed martial arts fighters in the modern era that I've ever heard like admit like a professional athlete like admit that they smoke like cigarettes and stuff. Like it's one thing to smoke a little bit of weed, but outright like smoking like cigarettes and stuff. And they mentioned like, well, maybe it doesn't affect him like someone that would like just start smoking cigarettes, but maybe if he's been smoking them since he was like 10 years old, it doesn't. His lungs have grown to be used to it or something. But I like myself a good cigarette every once in a while. You know, I don't want to buy a full pack of them or anything, but yeah, one every now to chill or like they were saying during like the weigh-in pre-show to open my lungs, even though I probably be out of breath walking up a staircase. But anyways, Carlos Prates, Muay Thai is his skill, like kickboxing. So we have two fighters that are kind of similar styles. Should be a stand up would expect it to be a stand up battle, but the difference is like Carlos Prates has more of like a knockout capability, like like you'd seen a lot of Leon Edwards fights go the distance. But Carlos Prates has had 29 matches with 22 wins and 7 losses, and he is 4-1 in his last 5 fights, with his most recent vi victory being over Jeff Neal by KO, spinning back elbows, and he was, oh man, like his winning streak, good Lord, like going all the way back 11 11 of his last 12 fights have all been wins by knockout, and then he lost a decision to Ian Machado Gary. So even though Leon Edwards has never been knocked out before, I feel like that's kind of like one of the only last things that Leon Edwards hasn't done in his career has been get knocked out. And so Carlos Prates seems like the hotter prospect right now, even though they're similar in age. Leon Edwards is just what, like a year older, but seems like Carlos Prates is a little bit hotter and has more knockout capability. So in this welterweight bout between Leon Edwards versus Carlos Prates, I'm going with Carlos Prates, and I think kind of like the curtain jerker of the main card here. I think we're going to get another knockout. We're going to get some finishes to start this card. You know, couple knockouts and a submission, and then it might be a struggle when it comes to the main cards, the co and the main event. But yeah, looking for Carlos Prates to maybe officially prove to us that Leon Edwards is washed, and now he's a gate holder, a stepping stone, a jag. But he had a nice run. He won the belt and then defended it twice, and he's still relatively young for the sport of mixed martial arts. But I think Carlos Prates is going to have his number come Saturday. All right. Now then, on to a welterweight bout between Sean Brady versus Michael Morales. And Sean Brady, he's definitely like Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but the last couple fights that he's had have been impressive in regards to like his dominating like wrestling and submission game that he's had. But he is 4-1 in his last 5 fights, and he's on a 4-fight winning streak over Kelvin Gastelum, Gastelum, submission Kimura, Gilbert Burns, decision unanimous, and then Leon Rocky Edwards, who we were just talking about, maybe getting knocked out beforehand, lost his submission guillotine by Sean Brady. So Sean Brady's hot, and it feels like one more impressive win, or maybe just one more win, and he should be right back in there for a shot at the title here. You would think that from either one of these two prior welterweight fights on the card, you think you have an impressive performance out of Leon Edwards or Carlos Prates, then they could maybe fight Jack Della Maddalena or Islam Makhachev, whoever wins in the main event. And the same thing with Brady versus Michael Morales. So one of those guys has a really impressive performance, or you just got to pick one of the four after, and one of the two after the Leon. These fights are fought, and you have a winner for each one, and then you'll have to pick who you think's more deserving for the next shot at the welterweight title. But yeah, you have Sean Brady, great submission game lately versus Michael Morales, and he is style is wrestling too. So this is kind of strength versus strength, even though it says like his style is wrestling. He has tons of knockouts, so must have good power and ability to finish people on the ground. And he is 18-0, so he's obviously 5-0 in his last 5 fights, with 2 of them being by TKOs over Neil Magny and Gilbert Burns, with 18 matches, 18 wins, 0 losses in the 18 wins. 13 of them have come by knockout, 1 by submission, and 4 by decision. Man, this is really almost hard to pick against Michael Morales with someone such a dominant record and performance, and they're ranked 8th, and they're still just a young up and comer, just only 26 years old, and has a similar style to Sean Brady. But man, Sean Brady looks so dominant in his last couple fights against like Leon Edwards and Gilbert Burns and Kelvin Gastelum. I feel like he's just one good win and one finish maybe over Michael Morales to get the next shot at either Jack Della Maddalena or Islam Makhachev. So in this welterweight bout between Sean Brady versus Michael Morales, it's tough going against Michael Morales because he's 18-0 and has had impressive competition, has a good rating in the welterweight division. But man, Sean Brady just looked so good in the last couple fights I've seen him in, with how he just works people on the ground, and just it looks championship level to me from what I've seen. So in this welterweight bout between Sean Brady versus Michael Morales, I'm going with Sean Brady to win this and maybe set himself up as the #1 contender in the welterweight division. I think he's going to win by a submission. He's going to probably have to wear Michael Morales down and try to get him out of the first round or two, because he's been so good in stopping people early in fights, to see if you can wear on him to the point where you're finally able to sink in some type of choke. I think he's going to choke Michael Morales out, submit him, make him tap. All right. Now then, on to the co-main event of the evening, UFC 322 co-main event. We have a flyweight championship bout between Valentina Shevchenko, the champion, versus Zhang Weili, the challenger. And Zhang Weili, we have this is something I didn't mention in the opening of this podcast, was that we have they're two super fights. They're two super fights. You have a fighter from a smaller weight class coming up in a division, a champion from the smaller weight class coming up a division to challenge, and kind of unify, like pound for pound. Like if Zhang Weili was to somehow win this fight, then she would be obviously the best fighter in the flyweight and the strawweight division. And the same thing with if Islam Makhachev, he would be known for being the lightweight and the welterweight champion. I'm sure both Zhang Weili and Islam Makhachev. If either one of them wins, they'll be holding two titles at the end of the fight and during the post-fight interview. But yeah, so we have a women's bout, flyweight bout between Valentina Shevchenko versus Zhang Weili. But I look at these two fighters kind of similar. You know, they both have respectable striking game. I think Valentina Shevchenko's striking is maybe a little bit better. I'm trying to think. Was she? I think she was like more. Yeah, she was Muay Thai and kickboxing. But she's also shown over her career that she's got a good ground game as well. So I would say uh, that she's probably the better striker, and then Zhang Weili is probably the better on the ground, but that might be something that kind of gets like canceled out because she's bigger. Valentina Shevchenko is bigger, so will it even matter that she's like quote unquote the better wrestler or the better grappler or jujitsu artist? Like it might get kind of canceled out due to the size different, the strength different. But Valentina Shevchenko, uh, she is. She is 3-1-1, so a loss and a draw there, but it's on a two-fight winning streak. And from the draw, she beat Alexa Grasso. What was that to get her title back, and then defended it again against Miona Fiorot, which was that was UFC 315. May 10th, 2025. But she's had 30 matches with 25 wins and four losses. In the 25 wins, she has 8 wins by knockout, 7 wins by decision, 7 wins by submission, 10 wins by decision, four losses, one loss by knockout, one loss by submission, and two lost by decision, and then the one draw. So shows that she definitely pretty even and consistent on being able to beat you like any way. She can knock you out standing or with the ground and pound, or she can get you in a submission and stop you, or she can go all 5 rounds. But I mean, at the same time, she's also been knocked out once, been submitted uh, once, and got lost the distance going twice. But really, my question with both of these super fights, super fights, is how they handle going up in weight division. It's always like gets overlooked sometimes. Like, yeah, may have been great at straw weight, or they may have been great at lightweight, but that all gets canceled out, and the type of punches and things that they throw don't cause as much damage, or they're not as strong as they were in submission situations in the smaller weight division. So both of these as the co and the main event, similar fighters, definitely similar fighters in Shevchenko and Wei Li. But Zhang Wei Li, she is on a 5 fight winning streak here, so 5-0. Just kind of finished up dominating the straw weight division. So to the point where I guess she feels that she needs a bigger challenge, literally a bigger challenge going up in weight class. But she is 29 matches with 26 wins and 3 losses. In the 26 wins, she has 11 wins by knockout, 8 wins by submission, and 7 wins by decision. And in the 3 losses, only been knocked out once, and 0 submissions and 2 by decision. So very, very similar type of record, and especially in her win record, shows that she can win in any type of way. She can win by knockout, submission, or she can go the distance. But I, I'm just kind of leaning towards the size being my deal breaker for both of these fights, even though I think both of these fighters are great fighters, especially Zhang Weili down at the division that they're coming from. But it's always a question mark on how they'll look coming up in a weight class, and if they're going to get bullied or if it's going to affect them uh, too much. But I have a hard time going with the underdog. I don't even know both of these two fights kind of seem like almost like pick'ems, but for me it's like underdog and smaller dog. But I don't see like dominant performances and finishes from Valentina Shevchenko or the fight on the main event, which we'll get into here in a second. But in this women's flyweight championship bout between Valentina Shevchenko, the champion, versus Zhang Wei Li, the challenger, super fight coming up from strawweight. I'm going with Valentina Shevchenko to retain the belt, even though I've heard people talk about thinking that Valentina Shevchenko is kind of coming to the end of her career and is older. I didn't really understand that statement, seeing how Zhang Wei Li is just what 2 years younger than her 37 and 35. So it's not like she's some spring chicken or doesn't have a long resume already, anyways. But I'm going with Valentina Shevchenko, and I think she's gonna just be just a little bit better and a little bit bigger, pretty much in any scenario situation. Uh, the fight goes with Zhang Weili. So unanimous decision or just decision could possibly be a split. All right. Now then, on to the main event of UFC 322, Della Maddalena versus Makhachev. So this is the welterweight championship bout between Della Maddalena, the champion, versus the challenger, Islam Makhachev, the lightweight champion coming up. So this is two super fights, like that alone. These having these two super fights and two actual title bouts makes this card better than UFC 321. And just with how 321 ended, I don't see how UFC 322 it isn't better, isn't better than UFC 321. But anyways, you have Jack Della Maddalena, who's known for having his great boxing, but he has the great boxing, but to go with that, he has a great ability like takedown defense and being able to get back up, and that's probably what will come in hand in this fight. And both of these fighters, Jack Della Maddalena and Islam Makhachev, both have like really impressive win streaks going on. And Jack Della Maddalena, how I look at his career almost is that he's undefeated, really, because yeah, he lost two fights in his career, but they were the first two fights of his career, and he lost by TKO punches and submission, rear naked choke in his first two pro fights. So I have to applaud him a little bit for staying with it and continuing to want to fight after losing in such fashion in the first two fights of his career. But since then, he's won 18 straight fights and he's won, let's see, and nine straight UFC fights. And so obviously he's 5-0 in his last five fights with a couple finishes, submission, rear naked choke over Randy Brown, and then KO knees and elbows to Gilbert Burns, and then the rest were split decision. But in his 20 matches, he has 18 wins and 2 losses. In the 18 wins, he has 12 wins by knockout, 2 wins by submission, and 4 wins by decision. And in the 2 losses, been knocked out once and been submitted once, and then no losses by decision. But you know, that knockout and that submission loss were that was what back in like 2015, yeah, back in 2016, almost yeah, almost 10 years ago. But he's facing like kind of like the prodigy Islam Makhachev. He's definitely known as that as one of the best lightweights of all time. It's still to be seen if he's gonna come in and be that at welterweight. But Islam Makhachev, known for his combat sambo and like his Russian wrestling and submission game, that all these Russian and Dagestan fighters are known for, and what Khabib, and all those guys coming from like the same camp. But he is on a 15 fight winning streak, and before he won he won the lightweight belt, and then he defended it 4 times. So I guess he felt that he kind of cleaned out the lightweight division with some impressive wins over guys like what Dustin Poirier, Renato Moicano, Alexander Volkov twice, Charles Oliveira. So those are the guys that were during his fighting reign of where he's obviously 5-0. He's either winning it or defending it off of the last four fighters that he fought. But in his 28 matches, he has 27 wins and just the one loss, which that was all kind of similar. Yeah, it was even farther back than Jack Della Maddalena's. It was all the way back in 15. Adriano Martinez knocked him out at UFC 319, October 3rd, 2015. So that's very similar type of winning records that both of these guys are on. Haven't lost in almost 10, 11 years, and are the current champions in a division. I guess Islam Makhachev isn't the current champion at welterweight, but definitely had to vacate and after being a record breaker for four defenses in the lightweight division, which I'm surprised by that. I'm surprised you'd think some of these lighter weight divisions would have held some champions for a little more than just four defenses. But he's had 28 matches with 27 wins and one loss. In the 27 wins, he has 5 wins by knockout, 13 wins by submission, and 9 wins by decision. And then just the one loss by knockout, and no losses by submission or decision. And so it's a size thing. It's a size thing. You know, you got these opponents like coming up in division, and sometimes it's just not there. Like the most impressive fighter that I can remember that like would constantly kind of go back and forth between divisions. He'd go back and forth between what middleweight and light heavyweight was Anderson Silva, but then you had other performances like what Islam. Uh, no, Israel Donajay versus yeah, Jan Blachowicz. That's who I was thinking of, and you could tell like Israel Adesanya was just smaller than him. Other times I've seen, I guess it be successful was like Randy Couture. So he went from heavyweight to light heavyweight, became the champion, and then couldn't beat Chuck Liddell, and then went back to heavyweight and beat Tim Sylvia for the heavyweight championship. And then I guess Daniel Cormier did similar thing, you know, was good at heavyweight, but then went to light heavyweight, won the belt, then couldn't beat John Jones anymore, and then went back up to heavyweight and won the belt. So kind of similar, but definitely bigger weight classes, you know, definitely bigger than going from 120, 115 to 125, and then 155 to 170. Kind of different apples to oranges there, but you can definitely see where I guess sometimes these fighters that go up in weight classes are better or have a lot of success, but sometimes you can just tell it's not because the skill isn't there or they're not as good as this fighter. It's just, you know, they're just not quite as strong. And so I'm sticking with that until I'm proven otherwise or I see otherwise. So in this welterweight bout between Jack Della Maddalena, the champion, versus Islam Makhachev, the challenger, I'm going with Jack Della Maddalena to win this, and I think he's going to win it by decision. I think Islam Makhachev is definitely going to give him all he can handle in regards to takedowns and ground game and trying to get him in chokes. You know, Islam Makhachev's got a pretty good Barbaro choke, but I think Jack Della Maddalena, because he's a true welterweight, actually has to cut weight, while Islam Makhachev just walks to the scale, no concerns at all. Like there's a difference there. You got a guy like Jack Della Maddalena who's probably walked around at 200 pounds before. So Islam Makhachev may be able to take him down maybe early on in the fight, or maybe even later on in the fight. But Jack Della Maddalena, I feel as if he's definitely gonna kind of be disheartening his reaction to Islam Makhachev, because he's going to be able to get right back up or stuff the takedown. And like I said, that gets disheartening to Islam Makhachev. But I also don't see Jack Della Maddalena taking him down and submitting him or or knocking him out or anything. Islam Makhachev and Jack Della Maddalena both showing great chin. So in the welterweight bout between Jack Della Maddalena, the champion, versus Islam Makhachev, I'm going with Jack Della Maddalena, the champion, to retain his belt. And like I said, I think it's just like the two main events, the co and the main event, the two super fights. I think the smaller fighters coming up have to prove it, have to show it to me first that they can handle the weight class change. And because it'd be different if I didn't say the current women's flyweight champion was a very respectable champion, or even welterweight Jack Della Maddalena being a very respectable current champion. But you got arguably some uh, greatest of all times coming up in weight. So, well, I guess we'll just have to see. And this will be UFC 322. So this is UFC 322. Della Maddalena versus Makhachev. So UFC 322, Jack Della Maddalena versus Islam Makhachev, and it's branded V Chain UFC 322. So I glossed over that early. But anyways, I think that's about all I have for you. Like I'm excited for this card. I like it more than UFC 321. I think that's partly because there's some good fights on the prelims, other than a couple heavyweight fights sprinkled in there, and then you got two actual title fights on the line, and then you could argue at least two of the bottom three fights are arguably, title contenders or title eliminator type fights. I mean, you could almost see like a world like if Sean Brady won and then Carlos Prates fight, then you could maybe see a fight between them as the official number one contender type fight. But anyways, I'm excited for this card, and like I said, the prelims should be really good. And I'm hoping like I backed Gregory Rodriguez, Crow Cop, after his devastating knockout that he left. Who was that? That was Jack Hermason with. Like I just had to remind people out there, like he's of like Dan Henderson leaving people twisted, like with the H bomb after they're already knocked out cold. He comes like over the top with like an elbow laying on their chin. So a couple stray strikes that Gregory Rodriguez landed on Hermason. Kind of like what he said in interviews. It's not his job to stop the fight, and I agree with that. And I've seen a lot worse as a UFC fan. But anyways, I think that's about all I have for you. So can I get a check, please?